President Obama's statements last week on redistricting reform do anything to change your opinion on that? That seems like something in the turnaround agenda that you could, maybe
You're
there's
just the
something
guy
to
we've
talk
been
about.
waiting for.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Please.
This is a statement that relates to redistricting and in part relates to the president's remarks last week. You don't have that.
I didn't know.
You can read this at your leisure. This is a statement from a group called the People's Map. This statement comes directly from a Mr. John Hooker, who is involved with the People's Map group. This statement would allege that what's called the independent map proposal has components which work against established constitutional and statutory requirements on minority representation in redistricting. So through the action of the Illinois Constitution, federal courts, Illinois statutory enactments, there are certain rules and requirements that are in place for legislative redistricting which protects the interest of minorities in the redistricting process. The
Map amendment.
would eliminate those. Would eliminate those. If you read the document, it would eliminate those. Okay?
Have you spoken with the other side, with the independent map amendment people who say that they've taken precautions to?
Well, that's the purpose of this document. I would really like you to read this and read it closely. It's well done, it's well thought out, and if you have to understand the history of redistricting over the last 20 to 30 years, all right? And so it all started with congressional requirements, constitutional requirements, federal court orders, changes in the Illinois Constitution, enactments by the Illinois legislature, and there's no question that the independent map proposal would negate the protections that were put in place. There's no question about that.
And the system that we have now for drawing legislative maps, do you ever see that as being used in a punitive way, pushing representatives out of districts, of,
Yeah.
maybe weakening
Yeah.
certain political parties in certain other places?
Sure.
Thin lines used
Yeah.
to connect?
The current system of redistricting is set out in the Illinois Constitution. It provides that the legislature and the governor get the first opportunity to draft a map. If there's a failure by the legislature and the governor together, then the Constitution provides for the appointment of a commission appointed by the legislative leaders, 8 people on the commission. If they fail to come to an agreement, then you have what's called the taking the name from the hat, which has brought on some criticism, okay? The current system was not always in place in Illinois. Once upon a time in Illinois where there was a failure by a commission, like the equally divided commission today, the remedy was an at-large election for the legislature. That happened in 1964. It was an at-large election for the Illinois House of Representatives. And so as we look at the current system, as we critique the current system, if there's a strong interest in changing that system, why, we may want to look at that remedy where there's a lack of an agreement. And we may want to look at that old remedy that was used in the past, which would be an at-large election for the legislature, both the House and the Senate.
Speaker, wouldn't the federal budget be a guarantor of minority rights if it was drawn up, the map were drawn up by an independent commission?
Federal budget?
The federal laws, in other words, there could be a lawsuit in the federal courts. Couldn't the federal courts be the guarantor? Because anyone could bring suit that the map was unfair and it would be heard in the courts.
But what the proponents of the independent map want is to change the underlying law and constitutional requirements in Illinois to advantage themselves in a federal court action. That's what they want. You can't argue against what's on this piece of paper that I just gave you.
Forgive my ignorance, who is this person and who are People's Map? and why should we believe them?
People's Map is a group of people that are vitally interested in the interest of minorities in the redistricting process. That's who they are. They were plaintiffs against the Republican campaign ideas a year ago.